Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3474. Today's date is 4th of July 2025. Just a couple of minutes ago, I was kind of like a recording artifact and I was disturbed, so I didn't really complete the artifact. So I wanted to continue that artifact, previous artifact, means 3473 maybe. But what is actually I'm actually asking this question? What is actually the question? Let me just start over from the beginning. Okay, yeah. All right. Why is taking so much time to open? Okay. Yeah. All right. Yes. The question is, what is being done to support the small business and startup? Okay. Yeah. First of all, what is actually this question and why I'm actually asking this question to myself? Okay. So first of all, this question is about economics. I was completely unaware of economics. I don't know about economics that much. I wanted to know more. I want to know more. Why do you want to know more about economics? I don't know, but I think that okay, it might gonna help me in the future. I'm not really sure, but my gut feeling is telling me that okay, you should supposed to know about that stuff. So that's why I'm trying to know about those economics and stuff like that. Alright, yeah. What exactly is this question? This question is about helping the small businesses. Okay, yeah, helping. What exactly helping? Helping means like giving them fund, subsidy, and things like that. Why do I have to kind of like help those small businesses? Like basically, if I am the government or I am the part of the government, okay, why does kind of like something like helping small businesses to grow the economy? Why does like I don't really understand the relation between the growing the small businesses and growing the economy. Yeah, that's really good. First of all, let's just understand the connection between those things. Okay, yeah, like growing the small businesses, how much it kind of like something helpful. As I mentioned earlier in previous artifact that metro cities. Okay, yeah. Still, I wanted to continue that. There are like in India, there are a couple of metro cities: Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai. These are kind of like some very crowded, dense, overpopulated city. Why does these cities are overpopulated? Like one of the biggest problem in that city is the overpopulation. These Why does this overpopulation is actually happen? Because of the job opportunity, right? Yeah, because if you went to Bombay, you will get a job. Okay, yeah, within almost like a couple of weeks you will get a job. But if you are in local city, you might not get a job. Why? Because in local city there is very less job opportunity. In metro city there is a more job opportunity. When the city is actually offering more job opportunity, that means so many people are actually relocate there and try to live there because they want their life is become better, and the metro city is actually kind of like a giving them life better. So that's why there are more and more people actually living in those metro cities. Then what's wrong with that? Like basically if more and more people is actually came in metro cities, then what's wrong with that? Like we should supposed to be expand the cities now, then we should supposed to be make the city much bigger so that more and more people will kind of like assembly live. But that is not good. Like basically it's this thing that the one city, like a one specific area of is kind of like assembly overcrowded. There are multiple things happen. Okay, yeah, traffic, criminal activity, uh, then home rent, like where does people should supposed to be live, food shortages, then basically the construction, everything. Like basically is this thing na ki obviously if there is a so many people actually living in one place, there is so many big problem is actually happened. Okay, yeah. And basically even if we provide all those resources for all those people in one city, then probably this might not also good too. Because of that ki if so many people are actually living in one city, then probably is this thing that ki pollution happen, traffic pollution happen, the life expectancy of the people is very less on that particular city, because the population is exist, the traffic and stress and everything, it just so much, yeah. So what is exactly the solution do I have? Should I kick them out? Should I kind of like tell them that ki you shouldn't supposed to be live in this city? No, I can't do that thing. If I'm kind of like a somebody government, I can't do that thing, because as a kind of like a somebody, I'm living in India, and every person has its rights to where does he should supposed to be stay or not, and vagara vagara. Okay, yeah. As a government, I will not authorize to person that ki you shouldn't supposed to live in that city. No, like where that particular person live in his choice, he his own rights. Okay, I can't kind of like manipulate that decision. As a government, I can't, nothing really at all. So how do I supposed to fix this problem? How do I supposed to solve this problem? Okay, yeah. First of all, let me understand why this, like let me figure it out, what is actually the problem, root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is that key job. Okay, because metro cities actually offering job, so that's why kind of like a more and more people are actually living there, right? Yeah. Then why not local cities are not offering that particular job? Like what is actually difference, like why the metro city is actually offering the job, but non-metro city or local city is not offering the job? What is actually the problem? Sorry about this thing, this disturbance and things like that. Okay, but the question is that ki why the local city is not offering the job? Okay, what is actually the problem? Because the local city doesn't really have any kind of like a simply business, right? Yeah. Because most of the business or most of the kind of like a simply the business is actually available in metro city. Okay, yeah. Why, like why only metro city? Why not kind of like a some other city? Why not kind of like a some local city? Why just only the metro city? Like first of all, there are multiple things. Okay, yeah, there are multiple kind of like a something um things are matter. Okay, first of all is that ki, as I mentioned, jobs. Okay, so what if I could kind of like a simply create a job in kind of like a simply local city? Means like that ki I would kind of like a simply uh, like a small businesses. Yeah, basically is this thing that ki basically in the local city, mostly the people who actually have some sort of idea to do business and things like that, right? Yeah. Why they should supposed to be relocated in metro city? Why not they start doing their businesses in their hometown or their local city? Why not they do that? Okay, yeah. Because the fund and issues, yeah, because in the metro city fund is actually easily get. Okay, yeah. But in local city you shouldn't supposed to be get that much fund easily. Mostly you won't be able to get the investor that much easily if you are living in local city, right? So that's where government is actually helping them. Okay, like if I am kind of like a assembly government, I have to be kind of like a help them to kind of like a simply to build bigger, to kind of like a something that okay, like let's just say, okay, let me clarify, like there is a kind of like a something example that I wanted to explain, which is actually real, by the way. Lizzat papad, have you ever know lizzat papad? Like most of people don't really know it, or maybe I'm living in Maharashtra, living in India, by the way. Maharashtra is the state. Okay, yeah. In Maharashtra, lizzat papad is a kind of like a somebody a cuisine. Okay, yeah, it's a kind of like a somebody papad is really sweet. It's not. It's a really good cuisine. Okay, yeah. It's kind of like a somebody look like a tacos, but really good way. Okay, yeah. So basically this lizzat papad, this company is actually established by the women. Okay, yeah. Like I'm not just kind of like a only woman who is kind of like a only very educated woman. No, like the women who are kind of like a simply the housewife of women. Okay, yeah. they gather together, they kind of like a something build the kind of like a papad business. Okay, yeah, they sell those papad in local city, and then government is actually giving them some sort of subsidies on things and tax benefit. When the government actually give them some sort of tax benefit, then more and more women will actually join into the Lizzat Papad organization, and more people, more and more women is actually making the papad, and basically the distributor is actually selling those papad to the, not only to the Maharashtra, but all but every state in the country and things like that. And when these things actually happen, all those kind of like a somebody housewife got a job. Okay, yeah, they won't be able to kind of like a relocate themselves into metro city. Whatever the profit that they will get all the profit at their hometown. Okay, yeah. And basically when this actually happened now, the women, the housewife women get kind of like some sort of amount of money on their hands. and and basically this is something really essential. Because of that, he like basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki India is actually growing. Definitely India is actually growing, but uh, only some part of India is actually growing. uh, some part of India is not growing, still is kind of like a something ruler. Okay, why this thing actually happened is because of that ki metro cities actually growing really fast and really high speed, but the local cities are not really growing that well. Means people are actually living in local cities not really growing that well, because kind of like a government is actually not actually providing that much subsidies or things. And that if I'm a kind of like a somebody government, it's kind of like a somebody my job to kind of like a helping those small businesses, because in the end those small businesses kind of like a helping to grow a kind of like a people who actually living in local city. Okay, yeah, and they will kind of like a somebody start their own business, figure it out things that key how they should supposed to do a job, how they should supposed to do a business and things like that. So yeah, it is like basically instead of helping big businesses, I have to be kind of like a somebody as a government, I should supposed to be help the small businesses. Okay, yeah. Now if I have to be kind of like a help the small businesses, how do I supposed to give them help? How do I supposed to, should I kind of like a give them kind of like a straight up money? No, nothing like at all. No, you won't be able to, like as a government, I shouldn't supposed to be kind of like a give them straight up money to the bank account to the people. No, nothing like at all. Okay, yeah. People who actually wanted to run a business or things like that, first of all, ease of doing a business means like that the business does really require land, that does really require kind of like some people, some sort of kind of like a some license of electricity and things and that because like more and more people is actually gathered together and work together. That means they really require a land, electricity bill and things and that. Okay, first of all is that ki let's just kind of like assembly all the permission thus they require to start our business should supposed to be easy. Means like that ki land acquisition, then kind of like assembly electricity bill. Okay, yeah. Then another thing is that ki whatever the tools that they really required, I have to give them tools. Like basically the license to acquire those things like land and things should supposed to be easy, and which is also really easy by the way. Like basically you can start a business by online, like you shouldn't supposed to be go outside and things like that. Like basically you just have to go to the government portal, fill up the form, this and that, and you are easily set up your business. You don't really need any kind of like a single amount of money, nothing really at all. You might need some sort of amount of money, but probably very less amount of money, maybe in within almost like a thousands of rupees you get kind of like a something, you establish your business. Okay, yeah. One thing, another thing is that key land. Okay, land is a kind of like a something very biggest issue. So basically if the people is actually kind of like a something like want to establish a business and they need a kind of like assembly land. Okay, yeah. As a government, how do I supposed to give them a kind of like assembly land? First of all is that ki I have to figure it out what kind of like a business that they are doing. Okay, yeah. What kind of like a something the like what kind of like a business that they are doing. Like first of all is that ki if there is a kind of like a couple of women's are kind of like a somebody decided to make a kind of like a bangles. Okay, yeah. So these are kind of like a somebody really good okay business because of that ki these are women who are actually making the bangles. Okay, yeah. So that means those the housewife women get a kind of like a some sort of amount of money in their hands, and they will kind of like a suddenly spend those money uh, to their life, to get their life is really good and things like that, so which is really essential. So I have to be make sure that ki the person who actually building those businesses, what kind of like a business that they are doing. Okay, yeah, if they are kind of like a making the bangles, then that is really good thing. Okay, yeah, obviously I have to go through all the evidence and things like that, that they are kind of like doing it things or not, wagera wagera wagera. Okay, yeah, and if I'm really sure that those people are kind of like something really genuine, and they wanted to kind of like somebody, those women are wanted to create a bangles and things like that, so I will kind of like give them some sort of kind of like a somebody land, but not as a free, but as a kind of like a somebody, as a kind of like a somebody that key with some sort of subsidy, means like that ki whatever whatever the land they want to kind of like assembly buy those lands, and kind of like assembly fill up the form that ki they want this land and we want government subsidy on this land. So basically if that land is cost almost like a 10 lakh rupees, so probably as a me as a government kind of like a giving them almost like a 3 to 4 lakh rupees of subsidy. That means that land is actually cost them for almost like a 6 to 7 lakh rupees, which is kind of like, so like I will not gonna give them land as a free, as a government I shouldn't supposed to give that thing, but as a kind of like a give them subsidy, that key this is kind of like a something really helpful for them. Obviously I will do that thing after I get kind of like a some proof of evidence that key the subsidies that I'm kind of like giving them is kind of like something for the right reason, and they are kind of like using it for the right reason. Okay, I'm bitterly assured of that, then I will kind of like authorize that thing. Why I'm kind of like doing it, that why I'm kind of like somebody kind of like checking all those facts and things like that, why just I'm kind of like letting them give the land just straight out of it. Well, I can't. Why? Because of that, I'm living in India. Okay, and I know there are so many scams in India. So many. Okay, yeah, so many scams in India. So basically, it's this thing. If I am kind of like somebody, if I'm a government, and if I'm kind of like giving them some sort of land, if I'm kind of like giving them land to the people for kind of like some business and things like that, I wanted to make sure that the land that I'm giving them is kind of like a use for right purposes, not for kind of like a wrong purposes or things like that, because there is so many scams. Okay, so basically I just have to aware of all the situation, that I need to kind of like have proper evidence that the land that they are using for that businesses, it for the right purposes, not for kind of like wrong purposes. Okay, first of all I'm giving them land. Another thing is that a tax benefit. Okay, yeah, like basically is this thing, whatever the profit they are earning, obviously government is actually get some sort of gain some sort of taxation. How does taxation actually happen? Like basically is this thing, they are kind of like a somebody making the bangles, and they are selling the bangles, and the year end profit is almost like a maybe $10 million or maybe more than that. Okay, yeah, so probably this is kind of like some money, that is so much amount of money, right? Yeah, so obviously is this thing as a kind of like somebody that if they wanted to kind of like establish a business, they have to kind of like give them a tax to the government and things like that. It's for benefit for rest of the things and something like that. And every businesses actually file up the taxes and things like that. So these businesses also kind of like a fill up the tax things too. Okay, yeah, but at the beginning of the time, at the beginning of the businesses, they might not gonna earn that much amount of money, because yeah, because like at the beginning they might not have that much customer and things like that, and the profit is almost like a really less, maybe almost like a maybe $1 million, or maybe almost like a $500,000, maybe very less than that. So when these things actually happen, then probably is this thing that I have to give them tax benefit, that government is not actually kind of like a cut off the tax, like a yeah, like a whatever the profit that you get the most profit from yours, get most of it for you. Government actually get little less, okay, at the beginning of the time. Also I have to be do those things after I assure that the number that they are quotation, the number that they are kind of like providing, I have to be kind of like somebody have proper evidence that yeah, like this is kind of like some profit that they are getting, and then I will kind of like give them tax benefit. Another thing is that giving kind of like some teaching to the business. Okay, yeah, business is not is business is a kind of like some skill. It's not kind of like somebody the selling a bhaji pala or things like that. No, it's a kind of like somebody the understand the sale, understanding the customer behavior, understand the marketing and things like that. Because this is really essential to understand from every point of perspective that how do I supposed to sell the business, how do I supposed to sell the product. Okay, yeah, because in India there are hundreds of people who like billions of people who are actually living in India, and they have very different thought process, different mindset and things like that. Okay, yeah. So if I'm kind of like a somebody as a kind of like a somebody if his business is actually selling the bangles, I have to be kind of like a letting them what kind of like a bangles, what kind of like a somebody like let's just understand the bangle business. Okay, yeah. You understand what exactly bangle? Bangle is a kind of like something chudi. Okay, yeah, that is called bangles. Okay, yeah. So basically, bangle is a kind of like a somebody the kind of like a somebody the historical thing. Okay, yeah. Obviously, these are kind of like a somebody bangles are associated with the cultural art, cultural thing. Okay, yeah. Most of the women are actually wear the bangles. Okay, yeah. But in metro city very less amount of people is actually wear the bangles. In local city or in village, more and more people actually living the bangle, more and more people actually using the bangles. Okay, yeah. So as a kind of like a somebody business, I should supposed to be more focused on village area or kind of like a somebody local area, local city where people or maybe kind of like a women are actually still use bangles. Okay, yeah. Because bangle is a kind of like a somebody that ki a little bit something very like a new people are not using this thing. The women right now they are not using it this thing. The old people are actually old or kind of like a somebody the like basically this thing the people who actually from village or kind of like a local city, they are kind of like using the bangles. So I wanted to make sure that ki, as a business owner ki, I have to be whatever the bangle that I made, I have to be sell those bangles in kind of like a village or as well as kind of like a somebody the local city. First thing. Another thing is that ki, I shouldn't supposed to be focused on local and village area, I should supposed to be focused on metro city too. Because let me tell you one thing, yeah, still metro city people are not using bangles every single day, but once in a time they when they have wedding or things like that, they will gonna kind of like wear those bangles. Okay, yeah. So obviously I have to be sell those bangles in metro city, but I will not gonna sell kind of like a somebody the same bangle that I'm kind of like a selling in village and same bangle selling on this metro city. No, I have to be make kind of like a somebody very different tactics. Means like that, ki if I wanted to sell the bangles in kind of like a somebody metro city, I wanted to make sure that those bangles are costly. Yeah, what do you mean by that? Like example is this thing: if I'm kind of like a selling a bangle 60 rupees per dozen in village, then probably I have to be cost almost like a maybe 300 to 400 dozen of bangles in metro city. 300 to 400 rupees dozen for metro cities. Why I'm kind of like a increasing price is because of that ki the people who are actually living in metro city, they have kind of like a somebody mostly have kind of like a somebody have uh, bigger amount of earning money salaries. Okay, yeah. So obviously I have to be kind of like a sell those bangles in very costly, but not just costly, I have to be kind of like a figure it out that ki the quality should supposed to be good, the design should supposed to be good, the everything should supposed to be good, as well as that bangles is always kind of like a somebody resonate with their outfit or things like that. Because in the village area people are just wearing bangles and that's it, but in a metro city people are actually wearing bangles for kind of like a somebody the fashion or things like that. So I wanted to make sure that those bangles are not only made for kind of like a somebody art pieces, is meant for kind of like a somebody resonate with their dress or things like that. It is that okay, it fit properly, it kind of like a look good, it kind of like a somebody the quality is kind of like a somebody really good and things like that. So this is the stuff that I would gonna do, as well as kind of like a somebody I will gonna use as a kind of like a somebody business or owner. I'm kind of like a using my bangles to as a kind of like a somebody e-commerce website like a Flipkart or Amazon. These are kind of like a somebody website are kind of like a somebody the help for small businesses. Means like that ki they are kind of like somebody distributor. Means like that I will gonna making the bangles. Okay, yeah, I will kind of like a list those bangles in kind of like a somebody Amazon or things like that. So basically like a basically is this thing, those bangles will kind of like a somebody sell in all over the India. So whatever the kind of like a order will came, the Amazon distributor will gonna came and they will kind of like assembly shipment my bangles to the another part of the country, which is kind of like assembly I will gain the profit from that thing too. Okay, yeah. So these are kind of like a somebody the some sort of steps that I will gonna do to establish my business and grow my business. Okay, yeah, but this is not just a one thing. There is a multiple things too, like basically in their company there are multiple things too, like basically how do I supposed to hire a kind of like a somebody housewife, because in the end my main purpose is to give them kind of like a some sort of amount of money to the kind of like somebody housewife. Okay, yeah, so how does kind of like a somebody have the have the housewife, how do I supposed to convince the housewife to kind of like a create the bangles? Because let me tell you one thing, that key, uh, the not every housewife are willing to do a job, because in the end I'm living in India, and basically is this thing in local city or in village area, the people are kind of like a still are kind of like a have a like they just like basically is this thing na ki they are not like as a kind of like a somebody housewife of Indian villages or things like that, they are not allowed to earn money. Yeah, legit, they are not allowed to earn money. So how do I supposed to convince them? It is kind of like something really essential, because this is something really very bigger fact. Because but why should I supposed to be hire housewife? Like I should supposed to be hire a kind of like a somebody the kind of like a somebody person now, kind of like a somebody or kind of like a somebody a man or kind of like a things like that. Like I should supposed to be hire that thing. Well, I can't do that. Why? All the kind of like a some subsidies that I'm getting from the government is getting the government because I'm kind of like a giving them rozgar or giving them job for housewife, okay, of the villagers or village people or things like that. Okay, yeah, if I am kind of like a somebody using kind of like a somebody man or kind of like a somebody any other random people, then probably what will gonna happen that key I will not gonna get that subsidy from the government. If I'm not get that subsidy, then I will not gonna gain the profit. Means like that key land acquisition, the land subsidy will not gonna get, the tax benefit they will not gonna get, and things like that I will not gonna get that thing. Okay, yeah, so for me it is really essential that ki I should supposed to be hire a housewife. Okay, yeah, so how do I supposed to hire the housewife? And basically I'm living in India, every family doesn't really allow their women to kind of like do their work and things like that. So how do I supposed to manage that thing? I have to be convince them. I have to be convince them. Like basically, first of all, let's just understand. Okay, yeah, who will gonna kind of like actually work? Which kind of like actually housewife will gonna work in my company? Okay, yeah. Uh, does that woman from metro city? Definitely not, because in metro city the housewife they already have a job and things like that. They will not gonna kind of like do a job, things like that, nothing at all. Okay, yeah. So metro city is not. So what kind of like a somebody housewife should I supposed to? I should supposed to focus on kind of like a somebody the village area, village housewife, or kind of like a somebody local city of housewife. Okay, because these are kind of like a somebody very credible source that I will get kind of like a somebody housewife, so that I would kind of like a somebody convince them ki would you work on this, would you work on this bangle, things like that. Like basically it's, and make sure that ki they will gonna make the bangles in their city or in their kind of like a somebody local area where kind of like a they shouldn't supposed to travel more. Okay, yeah, if they travel more, then I have to give them kind of like a somebody travel accommodation, and I don't want that. So make sure that ki what the women that I'm getting, those women are actually make those bangles in their local city. Means like that ki, let's just say I have a village, let's just say village number A, and I have almost like a hundreds of housewife in that particular village. Okay, so probably I wanted to make sure that I wanted to establish factory in that particular village. Okay, yeah, so that kind of like some people will gonna go there and kind of like make the bangles and things like that, and they will gonna earn money from it. Okay, yeah, this is the one thing on. Okay, yeah. uh, okay, and then there is a very different thing too, like basically is this thing that ki I won't be able to kind of like somebody create the multiple factories in every villages, right? So I can't do that. Okay, so probably I have to be figure it out this thing, like basically which villages is kind of like somebody close by or things like that. Like I have to be spend some sort of amount of money in kind of like some travel accommodation for those women, but still I have to be kind of like make sure that ki those women will not gonna travel more than 100 kilometer. Should supposed to be there kind of like somebody the location would be kind of like a less than 10 less than 20 kilometer. Okay, yeah, if there is a kind of like somebody the industry is actually kind of like in less than 10-20 kilometer, which is kind of like something really good, I would kind of like give them kind of like a travel accommodation, so that all those housewife will kind of like somebody went to that industry, make the bangles and things like that, right? Yeah, all right. Okay, so this is all those kind of like a business strategy and things like that. Like I will gonna go deep and deep and deep and things like that about how do I supposed to make the bangles and things like that. But yeah, like this is kind of like as a government I should supposed to be teach them the how do I supposed to run the business, how do I supposed to kind of like a how do I supposed to taxation, how do I supposed to kind of like a file the billing, how do I supposed to hire the kind of like a somebody proper customer, like a proper kind of like a somebody employee or things like that. I will kind of like a give them, and not just kind of like a somebody in just Bangalore level, but in, yeah. And basically is this thing, my motto is that ki I wanted to kind of like empower is that ki more and more women, as well as kind of like somebody the village, and as well as kind of like somebody people from village and things like that, but mostly focus on kind of like somebody empower the women, because in the end women is kind of like somebody very essential factor, because in the house if there is a woman is kind of like somebody literate or things like that, she will gonna kindly the entire house will gonna literate. Okay, yeah, it's a kind of like a somebody the light in house. If we kind of like a somebody the if we kind of like a enlightenment women to through the knowledge and things like that, the way that she spread the light, she gonna spread the light through the entire family, so which is kind of like something really essential. Like this kind of like a light will not gonna blown by the male person, because male is not kind of like a somebody credible person to kind of like a somebody enlight the light to the kind of like a family, but women does as a housewife does. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to make sure that the kind of like a somebody the women will kind of like a somebody get like a basically why does kind of like a somebody only focus on women, why does I'm kind of like a not focus on men and things like that. Well, the problem is that na ki yes, male, like I'm not kind of like a doing any kind of like a somebody discrimination, and basically if I'm kind of like a somebody allowing helping small businesses, I don't want to do any discrimination. I wanted to make sure that male and female both are get kind of like a somebody equal amount of opportunities or things like that. But what I'm trying to tell you is this thing: male can relocate, male can do a job, male can get out of his families or things like that, or male can. It is kind of like a thing is that na ki male can get a job. Okay, yeah. Even if I'm kind of like giving them help or not, they will kind of like figure it out and they will gonna get a job. Okay, yeah. Because it's kind of like somebody in natural tendency that ki they should supposed to be work and they will get a do work. Okay, yeah. Female is on the other hand that ki they didn't really get a work, or they didn't really have kind of like a job opportunity, or they didn't really have kind of like somebody that ki money in the money on their hand. And when there are things is happen, when the women doesn't really have that much amount of money in their hand, when they not really have that much amount of power in their house, they are kind of like a somebody they are kind of like a somebody stay in that house as a kind of like a somebody as a servant or things like that. And god knows what happened with in them. Okay, because their in-laws there, the families are there is a lot of things are there. Like basically I'm living in India, and rural cities are actually much more worse. Like basically the housewife are kind of like a somebody so many things that they are kind of like a somebody suffering from. So if I'm kind of like somebody government, if I just have to kind of like a giving them kind of like a somebody empowerment, because this is kind of like a somebody when those housewife have some sort of amount of money in their hand, they will gonna spend their money on their family, they will gonna spend their money on their child, they will gonna spend their money on their house, they will gonna spend their money on kind of like a somebody, yeah. But male does do the same thing now, like basically as a man can do the same thing. Yeah, you are right, but it's not completely right. What do you mean by that? Like basically is this thing, man is kind of like a somebody always kind of like a somebody reference with a lot of things. Okay, yeah. Like basically I'm kind of like a somebody, maybe I'm completely wrong or maybe I'm completely right, I'm not really sure, but this is what I thought, this is what I kind of like a somebody gain experience regarding about that. Okay, yeah. As a male person has a kind of like a somebody have addiction problem, they will kind of like a somebody, like basically I'm talking about as a rural area. Okay, yeah. Because of that key, when the man has when the male person has a kind of like a somebody earning money, what will gonna happen that ki they will gonna spend that money on kind of like a somebody child or things like that, but they will not gonna spend money on their wife. Okay, yeah, yeah, legitly, like they will think that ki the wife is a kind of like a somebody, their wife, their his own wife is kind of like a thing that ki she is have a kind of like a somebody have job to kind of like a serve our family or things like that, we should supposed to spend their money on her or things like that. It's not like a basically it's this thing, the like I'm talking about from my point of perspective. I'm living in India, I'm living in my family, and my father is never really kind of like a somebody give them respect to my mother. And this is what somewhat true, like basically every Indian family has a kind of like a somebody same thing. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is now. Like basically is this thing that ki a male person is definitely providing kind of like a providing food for things like that, but what is actually best for child, what is actually best for the house, what is actually best for things, as a woman knows much better than a male. Okay, yeah, like basically uh, groceries. Okay, what kind of like a groceries actually happened? Okay, what kind of like a grocery should I supposed to be buy? As a housewife can buy those groceries very well with kind of like a very less amount of price, but as a male person can't do that thing. Like yeah, can do that thing. It's not really that male person can't do that thing. They can do that thing, but they will not that much efficient. Okay, yeah, means like that ki, like usually, like let's just say my father usually bring almost like a 10 kilos of sugar every month. Probably 10 kilos of sugar, that is too much amount of. Okay, yeah, but if my mother went, my mother kind of like a somebody buy 5 kilos of sugar, and they will kind of like somebody use that sugar for rest of the month. Okay, yeah, so this is what it is now. Basically, this thing, the way that kind of like a somebody woman buys groceries is kind of like a, she knows what kind of like a somebody what she want and things like that. So basically, in rest of the house, what is actually things that is matter, women kind of like a somebody do that thing as a kind of like a, what child does really require. Like basically as a child, they want, if there is a kind of like a field trip in their school. Okay, and basically they want some sort of amount of money. So basically every child first go through the mother, not father. Okay, because father is always have kind of like somebody's that mentality that key, father is always have angry and things like that, and they will not gonna give the permission, things like that. So usually as a child usually go first to the mother. Okay, and they will convince mother that he allow me to go to the field trip and things like that. So basically if the mother has some sort of amount of money, then father is not kind of like a somebody responsible to give the money or things like that. But I'm not gonna say that ki not just like basically like you should supposed to be talk to the father and things like that, but it's like that na ki mother is a kind of like a somebody very very a person that understand house much better way as compared to male person. Okay, yeah, as compared to father person. So this is what kind of like a somebody, if I'm kind of like a somebody supporting small businesses, I wanted to make sure that ki whatever kind of like a somebody I'm giving the benefit, I have to give the benefit for women, for kind of like a somebody the housewife of the women. Okay, yeah, the ruler women. Okay, they, I wanted to empower them, I wanted to kind of like a give them opportunity to earn money or things like that, because when they have opportunity they will understand in really much better way as compared to male. Okay, yeah, and basically if this thing happened, probably is this thing na ki uh, it will gonna help to the grow our economy or things like that. Because in the end almost like a 70% or 80% of the population still lives in village. Okay, so helping the small businesses is kind of like somebody helping small businesses, helping women are somewhat something really essential for my country's growth and things like that. So this is what I am kind of like somebody thinking right now. Okay, yeah, so this is what I will gonna do to kind of like somebody help those small businesses and things like that. All right, I'm really tired to talk right now, but this is it, I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.